Hey, everybody. I wanted to talk today about Stoicism and your pain in the ass client because we all have one. We've all had one. If you're a client, maybe you want to skip this, but maybe not because even our clients have clients, right? We're all providing something to someone. That's how we bring value. Whoa. Um, so I'm going to talk about two different Stoic theories today, and there's a lot of overlap between Stoicism and Buddhism. And if you don't know, I'm kind of like Buddhism is something I've studied a lot of and really into. But one of the things about Stoicism that they talk about is basically like in contemporary terms, I would call it you need to parent your mind. And before I start this, let me back up a little bit and talk about mindset because there's a lot of like hype gurus, and you'll hear me talk a lot on this stuff on these lives about hype gurus because like they have like a purpose, which is they get people excited and they motivate people. But the problem is that you can get really addicted to hype gurus. And then that leaves you in a spot where you're just, again, like chasing the next thing. But nonetheless, mindset is very important, right? Because you have to have your head in the right spot. Otherwise, you are going to be tossed around like a ship at sea. So one of the things that they talk about in Stoicism is that in a contemporary way, you would say, parent your mind. You need to parent your mind. There's this tendency to think that everything we think is the truth. So if you have a pain in the ass client, right? And I'm sure there's many reasons people can be a client that's really irritating. But in my experience and from the experience I've seen is that the main thing is pushing boundaries. So when you set boundaries and your clients keep wanting more and more and more from you, and they don't want to offer more value in return for your extra effort, that's where you can get really irritated. You can get really angry. You can start to think about your client as a pain. You can start to get irritated when you see or hear from your client. And that's not helping anybody. It's not helping you, and it's definitely not helping your client. So what you can do is really kind of like reset, reframe. And I know everybody does this Pollyanna, like just be happy for what you have and stuff like that. And it's easy to develop a lot of cynicism around that. But truthfully, in the Stoic way, so another Stoic technique is to purposefully suffer so that you appreciate the things that you have. And a client that is pushing you is a great example of purposefully suffering, right? Of course, there are limits to these things, and we don't want to get into like a point where you have scope creep, which is basically, if you don't know this, it happens more often in software than a lot of other things. But it's kind of like where you set the parameters of the work that you're doing, and then the client keeps asking for more and more changes and more things, so that right, it becomes to a point where it's never ending, and it can cause a lot of resentment, right? So you need to put a stop to that, right? You need to list 5 changes included or whatever, and really stick to your guns around that. But if you're still getting irritated and you're controlling your scope creep, you can use it as an opportunity to appreciate your other clients who are super amazing to work with and who respect your boundaries and take your advice. And so that's the bright side, right? And it's funny because we have this word in English where we call someone stoic who's not very expressive or who's dull, or maybe even it might be a word for someone who's not so bright. But that's not the original meaning of the word stoic. And remember, speaking of clients that are hard to work with, you create your own emotions, right? I may have mentioned that at the beginning. You can fire your clients, right? And I think that a lot of when resentment builds up, it might actually be the best thing for a client and a provider to move on and away from each other. So you can also use that, even if you fired your clients, you can use that irritation next time you work with someone who's irritating you. And it might not even be them. It might be you. It might be me. It might be, oh, dang, I forgot to eat lunch again. I wonder why I'm irritated, right? So, but you can always come back to that and be like, this one client, that really yanked my chain today, but like it wasn't nearly half as bad as like 6 months ago when I had this one lady. Oh, right. It's just helpful to use it as a positive reframe instead of concentrating on how bad things are right now. Because things always could be worse. And I know that feels like a shitty way to frame things, but it's a great way to grow an appreciation for what you have. So thanks for joining us today, and I'll see you tomorrow.